Well, my story with the Bridge Ministry is definitely one that I didn't expect. You know, when I was a child, I was 11 years old, my father walked away from our family, and I was never a person that had a drug or an alcohol problem. But I didn't realize how much I was affected when my father walked away from our family. My parents were divorced, and that happens to a lot of kids. And so I went through life, I went to college, and I seemed to have everything, kind of figured out, and everybody thought I was a good person, and things were going pretty well for me. But underneath, there were some issues of separation and anger and things that I was going through because of what had happened between my father and I. And we talk about that a lot in the Bridge Ministry, about the deeper rooted issue versus the magnified problem of drug use or alcohol abuse. But I needed the Bridge Ministry just as much as someone who was suffering from those addictive type of substances, because I had addictive behavior that I couldn't see. Well, you fast forward to 2004, when my father and his life was affected tremendously because he had a stroke, an alcohol-induced stroke from his alcoholism, and he became incapacitated. I had to take care of him, and on the outside it looked great, but I just resented it tremendously because I had no relationship with him. I was angry with him, I was bitter. I remember him being in the ICU and me not really being concerned about whether he made it out. And I was really struggling. And I met William Washington in about 2006, and in 2007, he saw me and my dad in church, and he saw my father, who had suffered some brain injuries, stumbling behind me as I walked out of the church. And he could see my father just working so hard to keep up with me, and he could see the anger and the pain that I had for having to deal with taking care of my dad, someone who had walked away from me. And he knew I needed help, but he knew my father needed help. So he took my father in. And fast forward 7 years later, my father's still a part of the ministry. I'm working in the ministry. And through this process, what ended up happening was I began to realize just how much damage was done. And I needed the work that goes on in the Bridge Ministry to look at myself, to look inward, and to really deal with that anger and those different things I was going through. But the Bridge Ministry is also about ministering to the entire family. Through this process, my mother has been helped. My sisters have been ministered to by Pastor Washington and the staff of the Bridge Ministry. And we're just grateful to God for everything that has happened, how we've gone through this journey, and it's a journey that we're still on. So when I think about the Bridge Ministry, I think it's about a ministry that can serve anyone from any background, because I didn't have all of the typical issues you would think a person in the ministry should have, but I needed the work, and I still do. But I can tell you today, I'm in a much better place, and my father and I, we're working on our relationship, and we're moving forward. And that's what it's about in the Bridge Ministry.